My parents spent 18 years telling me I was the backup plan. My brother got the trophies, I got the leftovers. Then one phone call changed everything. And when they finally needed me, I didn't pick up. This isn't a sob story. This is how I made them watch everything they built crumble. If you've ever felt like the invisible one in your own family, stay with me till the end, because the ending is going to feel real good. My name's Holt, and for most of my life, I thought love was something you had to earn. My brother, Bennett, never had to earn it. He just had it, automatically, like it came with his name. I was 8 the year it became obvious. My dad spent a whole Saturday helping Bennett build a birdhouse for school. Hands over hands, patient, warm. The next week, I built my own science fair volcano alone. Nobody offered to help, and the night of the fair, nobody showed up either. I stood next to my volcano, watching other kids point at their parents in the crowd, checking the door that never opened. They never came. From there, it was just the rhythm of the house. Bennett failed a class. You'll figure it out, honey. I got into state on a full academic scholarship. My dad didn't even look up from his plate. That's nice, hun. Pass the potatoes. That's it. Pass the potatoes. I used to think I'd done something wrong. Took me years to understand. I didn't do anything wrong. I just wasn't the son they picked. Here's the part I didn't understand until much later. Bennett didn't ask for any of it either. I remember once, I was maybe 14, and he tried to give me credit for fixing the register system at Grandpa's store. Holt figured it out, not me, he told our dad. My dad just said, "Don't sell yourself short," and changed the subject. Even Bennett's honesty got redirected back into the story they'd already written. I didn't see it then. I just saw my brother getting praised again. So, at 19, I left, quietly. No blowout. I still showed up for holidays, still called on birthdays, but something in me had already checked out. When you stop expecting anything, it stops hurting as much. That's what I told myself. If you've ever quietly checked out of a family that never noticed you were still in the room, you already know where this is going. Hit subscribe now, because the next part is where it stops being about my childhood and starts being about what I did with it.
What I didn't know yet was that the gap between me and Bennett wasn't going to stay the same size. It was about to blow open, and it would take a barbecue, a cousin who talked too much, and a piece of paper with my grandfather's signature on it to show me exactly how far my parents were willing to go. My grandfather's hardware business needed a new manager. I had the business degree. I'd worked the floor every summer since I was 15 and knew the inventory system better than the man who built it. They gave it to Bennett. Temporary, they said. That was 9 years ago. Then, at a barbecue, a cousin let it slip. My parents had co-signed a $180,000 loan for Bennett's business expansion. The collateral was a property, one that under my grandfather's will was supposed to be split 50-50 between me and Bennett. I hadn't even known it existed. It had already been leveraged against a business I had no stake in. I called my dad, stayed calm, asked why I hadn't been told. He didn't even hesitate. "You're doing fine on your own, Holt. Bennett needs us." That was the moment I stopped calling first. Here's what nobody at that barbecue knew, including me at the time. 2 years earlier, before I'd even heard the word collateral, I'd already made a move that was going to put my family's entire future in my hands. I just didn't know it yet. 6 years passed. I built something of my own, a contracting company from nothing, with a guy named Grant Okafor who believed in me before I believed in myself. No help from my parents, no golden ticket. My family had no idea how well I was doing. Honestly, I liked it that way. 2 years before everything came to a head, Grant and I quietly bought a commercial building downtown. Just business, smart real estate, nothing personal. It wasn't until later that I found out who was leasing space inside it, paying rent every month to an owner they never thought to check, Bennett's store. Then came my dad's 60th birthday. Bennett's business, the one built on my stolen collateral, was already collapsing. Bad inventory, bad hires, bad everything. I noticed Bennett barely ate that night. He kept checking his phone under the table, jaw tight, the way you do when you're doing math in your head you don't want to be doing. My mom kept refilling everyone's water glasses even when they were full, the way she always did when she needed her hands to be busy. At the dinner table, in front of the whole extended family, she looked at me right in the eye. "Holt, you've done so well for yourself. Maybe you could help save the family name. Co-sign something for your brother." The family name, like I'd ever been part of it. I said no. Calm, quiet. Just no. The table went silent. My dad stood up and his voice cracked the whole room open. "You were never really part of this family the way Bennett was. You made that choice when you left." My mom didn't say a word. She just set the water pitcher down very carefully, like it was the only thing in the room she still had control over, and somehow that silence hurt worse than his shouting ever could. Bennett didn't say anything either, but I caught his eyes for half a second before I looked away, and it wasn't triumph in them. It was something closer to guilt. 18 years of small cuts. That was the one that finally bled. I said goodnight to my grandmother and walked out the front door like it was any other evening. That night, my wife Paisley found me on the porch steps. She sat with me a while, then said the only thing I've never forgotten. Maybe it's time they learned what losing both sons actually feels like. I didn't answer her, but something in me went from angry to clear. A few months after that birthday dinner, Bennett's lease came up for renewal. As the owner of record, that decision sat on my desk. I didn't call him, I didn't gloat, I didn't do anything sneaky, I just let it expire. Let the free market do what it does. Grant's property manager taped the standard 60-day notice to the front door. Yellow paper, block letters, the same notice every tenant in that building gets. I wasn't there when Bennett found it, but Grant told me later that his office pulled the ownership records to answer an angry phone call, and there was a long silence on the line before Bennett asked, very quietly, "Is this a joke?" It wasn't. The same week, I filed the paperwork to formalize my half of my grandfather's property, the half they'd mortgaged without asking. Not out of spite, out of finally valuing myself the way nobody in that family ever had. Bennett's store closed 2 months later. I drove past it once, almost by accident. The window decals were half peeled, curling at the corners in the heat. A liquidation company had already cleared out the shelving. I could see straight through to the back wall, where there was a clean rectangle of brighter paint, marking the spot our grandfather's hardware sign had hung for 30 years. Someone had left a stack of flattened cardboard boxes by the curb. I sat in my car outside for a few minutes, engine off. Just looking at it. I didn't feel like celebrating. I felt like I was looking at proof. A neighbor, who still had our number, told Paisley something I didn't expect, that my mother had driven out there too, a week after the closing. She didn't go in. She just stood across the street for almost an hour in the same beige coat she wore to every holiday dinner, staring at that faded rectangle on the wall like it was a headstone. Then she got back in her car and drove home, and never once mentioned it to me. My parents, who'd remortgaged their own house to cover his debts, started falling behind on payments they never told anyone about. The house I grew up in, the one where nobody came to my science fair, went up for sale within the year. A for sale sign went up in the same spot where my dad used to park Bennett's new car. I didn't do anything to them directly. I just stopped holding the ladder they'd never once held for me. Then the calls started. First my mom, little check-in texts like nothing had happened. Then my dad, straight to the point. Could I help? Could I lend some money? Just until things settled. The same words they'd used on me for 18 years. Just my name in the sentence instead of Bennett's. I picked up, not to help, to finally say it. "I'm not doing this to hurt you," I told him. "I'm doing this because you taught me exactly how this feels. I just never thought I'd have to use the lesson." He didn't have anything to say back. For the first time in my life, my father was the one who went quiet. A few weeks later, Paisley reached out, not for money, just to talk. We met at the diner we used to go to as kids. He looked tired, older than 37. He told me he'd known for years that it was unfair. The car, the business, the way every dinner bent around him, whether he asked for it or not. He said the golden child seat came with its own kind of pressure. Fail, and you'd confirm you never deserved it in the first place. So he stopped correcting people when they gave him credit that wasn't his. It was easier to let me carry the weight of being forgotten than to risk losing the one thing that made him feel safe in that house. He told me about the night of the birdhouse, the one I'd always remembered as proof of how easy things were for him. He said our dad had criticized every nail he drove in that thing until he cried in the garage after I'd gone to bed, and that he never told anyone, because who would he even tell it to? I'd spent 18 years picturing his side of that house as some kind of paradise. It wasn't. It was just a different room in the same trap.
I didn't forgive him at that table. That doesn't happen in one conversation. But something honest passed between us that hadn't been there in almost 20 years. My parents, though, that's a different story. We talk sometimes, birthdays, holidays, an occasional call. But something that broke that night at the dinner table never fully went back together. I've made peace with that. The real twist isn't the property or the lease or the money. It's that the golden child and the forgotten one ended up closer to each other than either of us ever was with the people who raised us to compete for their love in the first place. A few nights ago, I was at my own dinner table. Paisley next to me, our kids arguing over the last dinner roll, the good kind of arguing, the kind that means everybody's loved the same. My phone buzzed. My mother's name lit up the screen. I looked at it for a second, then I let it ring out. And for the first time in my whole life, that felt like peace. If this hit close to home, you already know families like this don't run on blood, they run on who actually shows up. Comment one word, Holt, if you'd have made the same call, or Bennett if you'd have stayed quiet like he did. I read every single one. Subscribe if you want the next story the second it drops, and send this to the one person who will know exactly why you sent it. See you in the next one.